Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2007 sci-fi thriller titled The Invasion. Now, The Invasion runs for an hour and 39 minutes long. It is directed by Oliver Hirschbiegel and also an uncredited directorial credit for James McTeigue. It is produced by Joel Silver. The script was done by Dave Kajanich and as well as the Wachowskis. It is based, of course, on the novel The Body Snatchers by Jack Finney. It is the fourth adaptation of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The score was done by John Ottman. The cinematography was done by Rainer Klausman. And it was edited by Joel Negron and Hans Funk, and it was distributed by Warner Brothers. The stars of the movie are Nicole Kidman, Daniel Craig, Jeremy Northam, Jackson Bond, Jeffrey Wright, Veronica Cartwright, who surprisingly was in the 1978 remake of The Invasion of the Body Snatchers. She comes back this time around. Josef, Sumner, and Roger Rees. Having seen the 1978 remake of The Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I really enjoyed this movie intensely, in spite of the fact that there was a lot of negative opinions. I believe Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 45% out of 100, which I totally oppose. It was very involving and very gritty, and surely gave me nightmares for the next 5 days. That's how effective this movie was, and still is to this day. When I walked into the premiere of the 2007 remake, The Invasion, I pretended that I just wasn't walking into another adaptation. I walked in with a clean slate and an open mind, with the intentions of viewing some virus-injecting excitement, and I couldn't be satisfied more. If anybody who is into this kind of sci-fi thrillers like this, you know, movies like I Am Legend and 28 Weeks Later, and amongst many other virus-inducing movies with the sci-fi genre in mind, I'm sure this will be a great collection piece. Some of my friends actually dismiss The Invasion as an overrated zombie movie, and to me, that is the misnomer of all misnomers. This movie doesn't even come close to a typical zombie movie. We get people talking like they're in a daze, the perpetual stoic expressions, and are completely void of events that's happened before them. Never once do they make the effort to eat one's brains, and are oblivious at first to who is or who isn't brainwashed. However, their unorthodox walking patterns is quite noteworthy, and that they could survive without depending on nourishment, and how they walk around with their stoic expressions on their faces just to infect victims who haven't been infected, gives them that zombie thing going for them. In some ways, these zombie-like beings are quite reminiscent to the zombies in Stephen King's novel Cell, a Novel. Okay, I'll be honest with you, the story seems a bit jilted at first. A UFO crashes on Earth, and from the get-go we already know that trouble is not too far behind, and not just from a guy manifesting into a gooey substance in his bed, as in the case of Mr. Tucker Kaufman, a CDC researcher from the early scenes in the movie, after he was doing some further research, some further investigation on this non-earthly bacteria. We see a scene of him like in bed. At first it looks like he's breaking out into some kind of a cold sweat, only to realize that his skin was peeling and he looked all shriveled up like a dry potato. And then the next morning it looks like he's all 100% better, like as if nothing has happened. The only thing we find out is that the guy does not talk with an expression on his face. He seems kind of rather detached and is just desperate to see his son, but it's not, you know, like a happy father-son relation. No, he wants his son to be infected with whatever illness he has, just so that, you know, he could pass it to him and pass it on to others, so that they could end up being like him and like everyone else. As the film progresses, we begin to notice that people are starting to act anything but human-like. They have weird grins on their faces, have a unusually creepy, friendly demeanor in their personalities. Oh yeah, and they also tend to barf in their coffee. So my little advice to you, if you're in this movie, anytime somebody offers you a hot beverage, don't accept it. I'm telling you, not as a film critic, I'm telling you as a friend. Do not, and I repeat, do not accept any hot beverages from anybody, no matter who you are, no matter who your friends are, no matter who your family member is. Do not drink the substance. Otherwise you'll be infected, just like the person who's offering you this drink. At first, people get the feeling that a global epidemic is on the horizons, only to realize that something far more evil is lurking around than one might expect. The horror factor is that some alien bacterial infection is running rapidly on the world's population, and nobody around knows where it's coming from. The infection moves from one individual to another, almost identical to the movie 28 Weeks Later, where they target their victims using bodily fluids, which then the victims end up with a change of attitude that makes them very passive, aloof, and their only initiative is to pass their fluids off to other unexpected victims and annihilate the immune system. But what separates the invasion from other virus-infective movies is that in most of them, war and utter chaos erupts, and victims and non-victims are not safe from these catastrophes. However, in the invasion, it seems that war and anarchy has stopped in its tracks. The Americans have stopped fighting with the Iraqis. Israel and Palestine are now living in harmony. Whoever thought they would see the day that would be coming? I know it's a work of fiction, but hey, wouldn't we like to have a war-free Israel and Palestine? I mean, they've been warring with each other for centuries, and now they're finally at peace. Maybe the human race has kind of finally released itself from their primal instincts. Oh yeah, who can ever forget that memorable scene when Nicole Kidman's character, Dr. Benal, and Daniel Craig's character, Dr. Driscoll, were going to a party where they met the Czechoslovakian ambassador, Dr. Henrik Belacek, played by Josef Sumner, his wife Ludmila, played by, I think her name was Cecilia Weston, and they were also joined by the Russian ambassador, Yoris, played by Roger Rees. And they were having a pretty interesting conversation about the wars that are going on in the world, and the question of whether the human race has evolved completely, or do we still live on primal instincts? And Dr. Bennell says something really, really fascinating, that even though we have advanced from being away from primal instincts, there is still primal instincts within us. We're still fighting. Wars are still going on. We still kill for the purpose of survival, for power, and yes, the misanthropy into believing that we're still doing it for greed, corruption, and anything just so that, just for the sake that we still have not fully evolved. We may have improved, but we're still far away from civilization. Well, in this movie, it seems like civilization has finally been fixed. I mean, the Americans have stopped fighting with the Iraqis. Israel and Palestine are now living in harmony. We see footage of George Bush shaking hands with late President Hugo Chavez of Venezuela. It seems that thanks to this virus, the world can finally live as one. And this raises the question, like, should we just leave things the way they are? Live in peace and harmony without any anarchy? Without anybody being competitive? I mean, for years, and as long as the human race is still in existence, we are always going to be competitive to one another. But now, with this virus, nobody is competitive to one another. There is really no violence, no aggression in the characters, but also at the same time there's no expressions, no feelings, no emotions. Nobody's happy, nobody's sad, nobody's angry. Everybody seems to be all as one, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, because it's just not natural. As long as the human race is still living, we all have to be competitive. Or else, if not, why build civilizations? Why build laws and customs? We feed on that. And I think that's what this movie kind of comes across. There's a lot of philosophy into this movie. It's not just some brainless sci-fi virus-infected movie. This movie actually does make you draw up conclusions and gives you something to ponder at. With that in mind, this movie proves that this is anything but a brainless virus movie, and we must ask ourselves, should this manifestation be stopped, or is this the poison from God to keep us from our aggression towards one another? Should we look for antidotes to bring us back to reality, or should we just take it as it is? These are the little food for thought when watching this movie. But from the looks at those who were affected, you should be lucky you didn't become one of them. And sure, it looks good to live in a peaceful, serene setting on Earth, but in the end you realize that we're actually just better off as violent, tyrannical humans than peaceful, soulless individuals. If there was any flaws to this movie, it would be that the ending was a little too rushed and unexpected. Sure, it had a good thing going for it, but they needed to further uplift the conclusion a little bit better. I mean, it had a lot of good things going for it, and before you know it, it just stops without a word of warning. But overall, I would have to say that the invasion is quite intriguing. If you like horror movies or sci-fi thrillers like this, you should check out The Invasion. I think you will really have a ball with this movie. If I was to give it a scale out of 10, I would have to give it a 9. So until next time, this is Eric Cartwright, and I will be back again with another review. So if you want to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. Remember, as always, be kind, be courteous, and I will be back again next time. So until then, this is Eric Cartwright saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.